Hey, thanks for coming to 1500ESPN.com or YouTube, wherever you're finding us right now. We are 1500ESPN.com's web staff. I'm Derek Wetmore. This is Matthew Coller. This is Vikes Insight. We're going to talk about the Vikes' first loss of the season to the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. We're going to talk about Bradford v. Wentz, the interesting dynamic there, the disastrous offensive line performance, and much, much more on the Vikings. Before we get started on the video, I have to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Please and thank you. 1500 ESPN Twin Cities on YouTube. Matthew, that offensive line cannot be the offensive line of a Super Bowl contending team. That's my contention. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, although the personnel isn't going anywhere, which doesn't mean that this team can't be really good and can't succeed. I think they showed us against the Houston Texans that there is a model for success against a really good pass rush with an offensive line that's struggling.
Yeah.
The problem is that today the Philadelphia Eagles got in the backfield so often and hit Sam Bradford so often that he couldn't really do a whole lot. And the biggest question here is, can they go back to what they did against Houston, or are other teams going to do the same thing that Philadelphia did to them today?
Now, there aren't a lot of defenses that are as pressuring as the Eagles are. I mean, left on the Viking schedule, it does get a little bit easier on the whole. But I like what you said. The difference between the Texans game and the Eagles game, to me, it was they were getting the ball out much, much more quickly against the Texans because they knew they needed to. That went away on Sunday. So if I'm sensing what you're saying correctly, it's kind of like there is the blueprint there for the offense to succeed even with these players along the offensive line. Why did they get away from that on Sunday?
That's a really good question that I don't quite have the answer to,
Sure.
Unfortunately. I know it's Vikes Insights, but I'm not sure why there was a change there.
It's not Vikings mind reading, though, so there's some of that.
This is true, and also haven't seen the tape yet.
Right.
Usually we could look at the coach's tape and start to figure some of things out. But just in terms of coming up with some theories, I would start with the fact that against Houston, they hit a couple of deep passes down the field right away, which showed the Texans Sam Bradford's arm is for real. And if you don't respect that, if you don't play a safety over the top, if you don't respect his ability to throw it deep, he's going to burn you. And today, they did not do that. They were unable to hit any deep passes or even get any looks at deep passes to throw the ball down the field. So the Eagles were able to play those short passes over and over. I also noticed quite a bit of lining up under center, which I don't like for this Eagles offense. I like them purely 100% out of the shotgun, spreading things out, even if it means Kyle Rudolph, the tight end, is far to the left or far to the right, and three wide receivers on the other side, using Rudolph like a wide receiver. I think that's a much better play so Sam Bradford can see where the rush is coming from, more or less see which lineman's getting beat this time, and know where he has to move in the pocket and know where his read is, as opposed to dropping back, potentially faking a handoff, and then turning around and seeing the rush right in his face. I thought there was a lot of that today, a lot of those 7-step drops. Maybe a couple stick out in my mind, so I'm overthinking it, but there shouldn't be any in this offense with a line that cannot protect their quarterback at all.
You and I watched the game from the Hubbard Studios, 1500 ESPN Twin Cities, and you said to me something late in the game. We were kind of talking about the offensive line throughout most of the game, and I realize it's not the sexy topic, but it's a big area of concern for the Vikings today and for the rest of the season. But you said something that stuck out to me, and that's that it's not all on the offensive line. Sam Bradford also had a down game compared to what we were used to in the first couple weeks with the Vikings.
There were a few throws that he left out on the field.
Sure.
I would put it that way. Now, there's one pass interference that was on the referees where Stephon Diggs was clearly interfered with, and that would have been a big play and put them in the red zone, and that sticks out in my mind. But with Bradford, he wasn't executing the way that he has in the past, even under the face of pressure. And as the game went along, it seemed more and more like he kind of didn't want to be there. And as well as he had played against Houston, while getting hit over and over again, it seemed that it really stung him pretty early on against Philadelphia as much as they were dominating. And I would say that they were dominating even more than the Texans were.
Sure.
So I think that's a big part of it. I think he's a little rattled where they drive down the field and you're thinking, all right, man, this offense is rolling against a good defense, and then it's the interception in the end zone because he gets his arm hit.
Yeah.
I think that was a part of it. And then maybe showing him different looks. This is a team, remember, that had Sam Bradford on their roster.
Right.
We act like that means nothing. Well, they would know everything about him.
Yeah.
That having him on the roster the last 2 years, all the way through training camp, strengths and weaknesses, and it seemed that the corner blitzes were getting to him. They were beating Jake Long around the corner when he was in the game. They were getting through and making it very difficult for him to read their defense. So it's possible that the Eagles have now put on tape some of the biggest things that Bradford struggles with.
And it's possible, too, that if you can get to him in 2.5 seconds or less, like if you beat TJ Clemmings on a simple one move, like, all right, there's not a lot that Sam Bradford can do about that. That's exactly what happened on that interception in the end zone that you're talking about.
Yes, and that is the unless part of the whole thing. Like,
Sure.
You shouldn't freak out about one game against a team with a really good defense.
Right.
Unless this is a blueprint for how to beat Sam Bradford. Now, I tend to think, how would that be possible? Because he was so good in the last 7-8 games of last season and so good against some really good defenses up to this point that I would look at this much more as, well, they're going to solve some of these issues. He's still going to get hit. This offensive line is still going to be bad. But I tend to lean much more toward, all right, Sam Bradford will get this back together as we go forward, especially against a very poor Chicago Bears team. And this will end up being a blip on the radar.
Sure. And if we're looking for good things to pull from Sunday's game, which moved the Vikings to 5-1, you could also say that their defense was stifling. I mean, it doesn't come across on the stat sheet as the kind of dominating performance that they've had in the past. It's not going to grab all of the headlines. But they made Carson Wentz, a guy who had looked pretty good 3 weeks into his NFL career, they made Wentz look like a bad quarterback on Sunday. 138
yards passing, 4.9 yards per attempt. I mean, those numbers are as poor as it gets for NFL quarterbacks in today's football. I mean, this is routinely guys are putting up 350 yards, and he only had 138. And if you walk away from that game, and I just showed you Philadelphia's offensive stats, and it wasn't like they were so far ahead all game that they were just running out the clock. I mean, they were protecting a lead, but it wasn't a big one, knowing that they had to still be aggressive offensively. And Wentz looked like a very poor quarterback, like they've done to other guys, like they've done to Rodgers, like they've done to Cam Newton, like they've done to Eli Manning, only even on a bigger scale here against a rookie. And most of the time, that's going to get you a win. This game comes down to, for me, a couple of situations. One is the special teams, that two major errors. If they were going to come back in the game, giving up a kick return for touchdown, just unacceptable, and the fumble on the punt. I mean, that just can't happen, and those cost them chances to win. And then twice in the red zone, not just in the red zone, inside the 5, and 0 points.
Go ahead and score there.
I mean, 0 points to come away when you're at the 5-yard line or less is not going to work to win a game. But I think the point is you couldn't play much worse offensively than they did today, and you're a couple of plays away from winning this game still, as bad as it all looked, because of how good your defense was. So we know that every game this year, the defense will keep them in games. Even if there's struggles on the offensive line, they still couldn't put together a run game. Sam Bradford didn't play his best, but the defense was still magnificent today.
I'll be curious to see how that plays going forward, because this offense, as you mentioned, the personnel is the personnel. It's not like, I think Mike Zimmer sort of alluded to it, it's not like they're going to go down to the corner store and find a left tackle. They've got to figure it out with the people they have. Now, maybe Jake Long improves, getting more time in the Viking system, but here's a guy that didn't have a job 12 days ago. I'm not sure what you think that the real upside there is. It's possible they could address it in other ways, too. I don't mean to harp too much on the situation, but it just seems to me that the Vikings were unable on Sunday to run what Norv Turner wanted to run with the players and the personnel that they had. So that means one of two things to me. That means either they need to fix the personnel or those people need to do better, or secondly, that Norv Turner needs to change what he wants to do on offense. And I think that you saw that in the Houston game. You didn't see it in the Philadelphia game, which to me is the reason that they lost on Sunday.
And we had spent so much time talking about how, hey, look, Norv Turner's made a change, and it's trickled down from Mike Zimmer and all those things.
Shame on us.
And then it had the look of going back to those 7 steps, going back to last year's offense that was a lot of rocky moments for the passing game. And we had all thought, man, Teddy Bridgewater in the fast pass offense might have been even better, and he might have taken that big step forward like Sam Bradford seemed to have taken. It's just I don't want to go over the top and say Norv ruined everything.
Right.
It might have been a case of overthinking during a bye week.
Sure.
Might have been the case of, hey, you know what? They're going to expect this from us, so we're going to go back the other way.
Let's change it up.
And it just didn't work. It also could be, too, that the Eagles, they've had a lot of tape now to look at what Minnesota did, look at those short passes, look at the success on run-pass options and throwing the ball to Cordero Patterson on quick passes and things like that, look at how Diggs was used, all of those things, and found some solutions. And really, when you look at the other side, when you look at what the Vikings have done to great opposing quarterbacks, it's been about the front four. And that's what the Eagles did here today against the Vikings, is that their front four was so dominant that it made it virtually impossible for the Vikings to do anything. I don't see that on a week-to-week basis that's going to happen because the talent on Philadelphia's front four, I mean, I knew it was good, and I know the Vikings' offense is not very good offensive line, but there's a reason they were third in the league in points against the Eagles because of those guys up front.
Incredible. Quick answer. Are you concerned about Sam Bradford long-term?
No, not at all. I mean, I still think that he is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league and that everyone has games that aren't great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it, that every game was not going to be a Pro Bowl caliber. He is not, I don't think anyway at this point, like a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's a quarterback that can be excellent in the right situation and given a great defense and lots of talent around him can win a lot of games. That's how I view Sam Bradford. I don't view him as Cam Newton, although he's struggling this year, their whole team. But I don't view him as a quarterback who's so good that when everything else is a disaster, he could just throw the entire franchise on his back and win 10 games, like Aaron Rodgers did last year.
Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning back in the day.
Yes, I don't see him as that good.
Yeah.
So I don't have any concerns about Sam Bradford. I have concerns about all the guys playing on the offensive line because there is, like you said, no solution. There is no trade for this guy or find that guy, not with the salary cap situation. And I am a little concerned about what they're going to do offensively in terms of a scheme. I need to see them in the shotgun, spreading things out all the time and not going back to the 7-step drops because I don't think that will succeed with Sam Bradford.
Well, the Vikings are going to go back to the drawing board. We'll do the same thing this week. We're going to grind some tape here in the next couple of days, figure out what exactly went wrong for the Vikings and how they can change it going forward. We'll have plenty more on our next Vikes Insight video, which will be in the middle of next week as we preview the Chicago Bears game. In the meantime, if you enjoyed any of the insights from this 1500 ESPN Twin Cities Vikes Insight from Matthew Coller and yours truly, Derek Wetmore, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. It's pretty easy to do. You just go click that thumbs up button. We'd really appreciate it, and we would reciprocate the favor. I'll give you guys all a thumbs up if you give us one. That'll do it for this Vikes Insight video, and we will see you in the middle of next week as the Vikings get ready for the Bears. See ya.